Hey everybody, it's Felicia Stitzel with Vintage Wine Marketing and welcome to today's Wine Wednesday. So today we are going to be talking about something that I learned from a very dear friend of mine, Kristine Bono. She came out to the Idaho Wine Industry annual meeting in February and she gave a presentation called The Power of Wow. And I've got to tell you, I can't even go over all of the notes that I took in a single day because it was just so extensive that you had to record it and listen to it and go back over it again because there was just so much information. But one of the things that she talked about was called setting the course. And what she meant by this was you need to set the course for your customers because it is you and you are in complete control of this. It's just like another thing you have control over is controlling the chaos. Like you've got a big group of bachelorettes coming in and they've been hitting quite a few wineries. She was talking about how like you have a special like room where you can segment them off from all the other traffic that you have coming in from your swinging by tasters. So that was just one example, but one thing that she was talking about is setting the course. And she had, let's see, 5 different things that she talked about for setting the course. The first one is you welcome them. And I have to say that there was a lot of wineries that I went to over this last weekend in Walla Walla that did not hit this one on the mark every time. Now, the number is a lot lower than it used to be, but there is still a couple of them where it took them 10 seconds or longer to acknowledge that my group had come in. And normally it was the ones that had an empty tasting room. So, that's always something. I believe that these are all things that we can all improve on, whether it's you're in the wine industry or you are working with an affiliate of the wine industry or any industry. The more that we can start welcoming and greeting our customers, the better we're going to do. So that one's a really good one. So you set the course and you start it off by giving them a welcome. 3 seconds or less. As soon as they walk the door, hey guys, how are you doing? We'd love to see you. So what on our lineup would you like to try today? Are you here to pick up your wine club membership? Just you instigate that conversation within seconds of them walking in because that instantly makes them feel welcome. That instantly makes them feel like they want to spend time there and inevitably spend money. So the next one is engage. You really, really want to be engaging with your customers. And there was one example from this weekend that I wanted to pull from, and from 2 different wineries that we went to. These guys were back to back from one another. So we started at one, went to the other. The people who were doing our tasting, they had at both locations had started within about 3 weeks. So both of them had only had 3 weeks worth of experience at that particular winery. They had both had experience in the wine industry working at other tasting rooms, but we visited within their first 3 weeks of working at that winery that they were at. So these are 2 different people, 2 different wineries. They both started within 3 weeks of one another, or in 3 weeks. So they only had 3 weeks of experience at that winery. And one winery knocked it out of the park. She was engaging, she was fun, she was cracking jokes and having a good time. You could tell that she was really passionate about what she did, about the wines that were produced, about learning more about the winery that she was at. And the other winery that we visited, she had the tasting notes that most wineries have about what the vintage is that they're pouring. And she wouldn't explain the wines very much. She would just slide the tasting sheet in front of us so that way we could read it. And it was a huge difference of experience for my group because one of which, we were having fun. We were all snapping pictures. We were cracking jokes, like having a good time. And at the other one, it was just really quiet. Nobody was laughing. Nobody was having like an outwardly good time. I mean, we were still drinking good wine, and that didn't negate from the wine that we were drinking, but it wasn't as positive of an experience. So that one, you definitely want to make sure that the people who are in front of your customers, that they are people. Gary Vaynerchuk actually says this, that you can teach wine. You cannot teach personable people. Like if you are great with people, you have high energy, you love being in front of people and talking to people and interacting, you can't teach that. And so he would actually hire somebody who knew nothing about wine, but was really interactive, engaging, personable with people, and he can train everything else. So you might want to think about that same thing, is that, you want to make sure that you find people that even in their first 3 weeks of starting the job, to make sure that they have high energy, that they are excited to be at their job that day. So that's the second one. The next one is share. We have talked a lot in these Wine Wednesday videos about sharing. Sharing your history, sharing your personalities, sharing what makes your winery different from all the other people around you. And remember, it's not the family-owned boutique winery, high artisan quality. It's not that. It's my grandfather came over from Croatia who knew nothing about living in the United States. All he knew was about making great wine. Something like that. You want to be able to share that story because, again, like we've talked about in previous videos, giving your customer that history, your story, that engagement of, you want them to walk away feeling like they are personally connected to your brand now because they know your story. So that's the next thing. Is number 3 is you want to be sharing your experience, sharing your story, sharing the wine, talking about the wine. Because you got to think, every tasting is between 40 and 90 minutes, depending on how many wines you're pouring and how much of a story you're going to be giving. So you're actually building a relationship with your customers for the next 40 to 90 minutes. You have to you spend that time to make an impression. That is a huge thing, because that impression is what's going to last with them for weeks, months, years later down the road when they talk about your wine. Let's say they had one of your Cab Francs or Cab Sauves that laid down for many, many years. And when they finally opened it, they had that memory of the story that you shared with them. And you are now being able to live on with that memory eternally because you made an impression on them. They remembered you. So the 4th one is release. Obviously, this is the release. This is when you send your customers on their way. They need to go to the next tasting room. They need to go home. Always make sure you ask for the sale. This is a huge one because not everybody does this. And I think that that's incredibly sad, because a lot of the wines that somebody goes out and tries, like they're really good. And sometimes, and I know from personal experience, you have a hard time actually deciding what wines you're going to take home because they're so good. You want to take the whole lineup home, which I've done. Yeah, it was a great thing. It was a great decision, but I've done it. And it's always important to ask for the sale, because if you don't ask for the sale, if you don't ask your customers, so what would you like to take home today? What would you like to revisit? Is there anything that you're kind of debating between? Because that opens up another conversation where they can start asking, what's your personal favorite? What is your outlook on these wines? Or, it's going to be able to help them make that final decision to solidify whatever was in their brain to take the wine home. So always make sure you ask for the sale. And this is when you release your customers, they go on their merry way. The next one, I feel, as the marketer, is the most important, and is something that we've been talking about for many weeks now, is the follow-up. This is when you need to be gathering that information. So this is when you need to be gathering information. You need to ask these kinds of questions. This is when you need to be on your game or have something that can be on your game, like these bots we've been talking about, the scan codes, always follow up. And the one thing that I did actually with a winery in California I was working with was they had a scan code up on the tasting room bar, just like we talked about, and their customers would scan. So, like I said, they had a scan code up on the bar. It was amazing. And when the customers were checking out, they would say, "We'd love it if you would scan the code over here. We can follow up with you, send you out exclusive promotions. You can be on our exclusive mailing list. We would love to be able to follow up with you to continue our conversation." Whatever it was that sold that person, they would ask their customers to scan the code. And it made everything so much more simple because now they're collecting that kind of information very easy. It didn't deter from their face-to-face interactions with their customers, but they were able to do that. And then the bot would wait 24 hours between when they scan the code and the next day to follow up with them. And automatically it was a really simple follow-up, like, can you leave us a review? What was your favorite wines? Is there anything that you'd like to revisit? I mean, just really simple little text of conversation, but it was a follow-up, and it was a way for them to gather their customers' information, so that way it can continue the conversation later. So these are the 5 things that Kristine Bono was talking about in her Power of Wow seminar. And I wanted to share these things with you because they are very powerful. And I believe that if you start applying these structures to your tasting room, it's going to change everything for you. And the ones that I definitely want to go back and revisit is engage, share, and follow up. That follow-up is absolutely key, because if your customer had a bad experience, you want to be able to fix that before they decide to post it all over social media or TripAdvisor or Yelp or Google or anywhere else that they can post a review. You want to be able to handle the situation while it's still fresh before they turn around and go post it somewhere else. And if they had a great experience, ask for the review. Ask for them to come back. Always continue to ask your customers to re-engage with them, so that way they will become those returning, faithful, loving customers that could turn into wine club members. You never know where a conversation could lead. So that is the total of my Wine Wednesday this week. Be sure to tune in next week for more tips and tricks of the trade. I'll check you guys all next week.